is coming for silver, and I think it's very, very close. Up and down, which way will silver go? I'm going to tell you all in this video. We're also going to talk a bit about a whale that has bought Bitcoin. I'll just go ahead and tell you, it's Michael Saylor. We're going to get into the numbers of what that Bitcoin purchase looked like. And we're going to talk about the end of the year dynamics. What is the news surrounding the end of the year looking like for crypto, for metals, for stocks? We're going to wrap it all with a bow on top. Let's go ahead and get into the morning sentiment and kind of jet through some of the news that I am taking seriously. So far, the sentiment outlook for this week, December 29th, it's going to be a short week into New Year's. Weakness shows in metals. So I think this is the part where metal bulls have to start doing quite a bit of defense as we have seen some metal prices come back down. But is that the end for metals? We'll talk about that here in a sec. Bitcoin fear and greed down to 24, so still an extreme fear. 24 out of 100 for Bitcoin fear and greed. 25 basis point cut in January, only 12% likely, according to Polymarket. Let's take a look at the live on this, and that's about accurate. 13% likely there. So January rate cuts probably will go the way that 2025 went, where they did not start the year off cutting. At least that's what Polymarket thinks so far. Major focus for the week of December 29th. Metals see correction pre-New York City market trading. SEC filings indicate a silver desk was liquidated, and hours later, $34 billion was injected by Federal Reserve. I'm not leading with this. This is not titled around this story, even though it easily could have been. I'm still putting this into the rumor category, although there are SEC filings that indicate that there is something brewing here in the silver markets. I'm going to call this one a developing rumor, and details are subject to change because we don't really know exactly what's going on with that. Bullish vibes. Michael Saylor strategy buys 1,229 Bitcoin worth 108 million. Very, very nice move there for Michael Saylor. Now, this isn't a huge number, 108 million, but it shows consistency, and it also shows after a period of buying cash, right, of selling MSTR stock and buying cash, that Michael Saylor and strategy are dedicated to buying Bitcoin, which is their MO as a Bitcoin treasury company. China will allow banks to pay interest on digital yuan to boost adoption. This is an interesting one. Kind of a big card being played here by the Chinese government saying, hey, Coinbase gives rewards on USDC, which is pegged to the dollar. Why not give rewards and let our banking industry have a bit of incentive for folks to use the Chinese banks by putting their deposits, their ECYN, the digital CBDC for China, into those interest-bearing accounts. So it's kind of a China taking a play from Coinbase. It's interesting. Those incentives have definitely worked very well for Coinbase. Looking ahead, December 30th, FOMC minutes. Those are going to be coming tomorrow. I think that there's a chance that those move this prediction market spread, right? And I think that there's a chance that it moves it to 25 basis point increase, right? I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but those FOMC minutes could reveal that the Fed is actually much more concerned about the job picture and maybe some other priorities, including AI and employment, than Jerome Powell led on in the presser, and since the Fed has come out and talked about since. So FOMC minutes dropping tomorrow. Usually those come out at midday, so we'll be watching those. January 5th, ISM PMIs. That's a pretty big print, in my opinion, because the PMIs are now the underpinning narrative, the strongest underpinning narrative for crypto, in my opinion, now that the 4-year cycle is under major question. January 7th, JOLTS job openings. We get some jobs data there from the United States. And then on the 15th, that MSCI decision on MSTR inclusion. I keep that up here because that is a big, scary cloud that will likely dominate a news cycle for that week, maybe even 2 weeks. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen in a positive way for crypto, right? That MSTR will actually be excluded from MSCI. We'll see. If they get included, I think that's very bullish. but I think that the market is starting to price in, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't seen much upside for Bitcoin, sustained upside, is because of this kind of this FUD MSTR story. I think mid to long term, by the time we're in April, by the time we're into the summer, I don't think anybody's going to care about whether or not MSTR is an MSCI. But there will be some turbulence around January 15th for Bitcoin and for MSTR. Supreme Court ruling on tariffs. We still don't have a date for that. It could be as late as the summer, but it could be as early as January. And that's what Scott Bessent said recently on a podcast, that he expects there to be a decision in January. Okay. Asia closed mixed. So let's take a look here at this silver charts. Okay. So silver has made a move. Silver has made quite a bit of a move since this low here back in October 28th. Silver has rallied 82%. Now you can go further back, right? But for our purposes, I just want to look at where is silver's next move going to be. And judging by this volume here, judging by the volume that came in today, this is a move that is not over for silver, in my opinion. Now, I do think that people were waiting for a big pullback in silver, right? And so this is a big pullback in silver. But if you look at just the MACD, right? Not even any of our awesome flow signals indicators, but if you just look at the MACD, this thing is very elevated. It's never been this elevated before. Let me show you. There you go. Now you can see it. Right. So this is an overbought signaling. Now, structurally, I think that there's a very strong argument to be made that silver goes quite a bit higher in 2026 than where it is today at $72 per troy ounce. However, I do think that if we go back to the charts, that silver is due for more of a correction, and the investors that have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for a dip they may be allocated. Maybe they pick some up here in the pre-market trading and into the early minutes of the New York session, but there's also a strong likelihood that they didn't go fully allocated because they know that with a big, strong volume histogram like this, that the price can come down further and find support. I think that there's going to be good support here around $54 per troy ounce. Am I saying that it has to come down to this level? No, but this was a level that silver struggled to get up above back here. It tapped this once and got rejected back in October, and then tapped it again and got rejected in 2025. Again, there's a chance that we don't come back to this level, but my thinking is that investors are wanting to buy low and sell high ultimately when they enter the market. And right now you're buying something that is going down, right? So that's going to take some time to work itself through the market. I think a lot of people have been FOMOing into strength, right? Buying into strength here. I think smart money on this move has probably been exiting into strength here like you would in a euphoric phase of an altcoin season. With this, though, you're seeing now price move down. And that's just the same like people who were buying here into strength. They're probably going to be selling out of weakness, out of the panic, and maybe they're going to take a loss. Maybe they're going to make a small profit like I did. That was my play, by the way. I'm not saying that everybody buying here is dumb, right? I was buying palladium, not silver. It's not dumb to buy into strength, but it's dumb to buy into strength and just sit on it and think that the price isn't going to come back down. Okay. So that's the move that I'm anticipating. I think from here, silver has a move to the downside more significantly than we've seen so far. There's all kinds of little gaps in here as well. I'm not going to make those arguments, but that's something that folks would notice. The main reason that I think we're going to come down and see lower prices for silver, south of 65, is just because of this MACD overheated, curling, sending an early signal that this wants to come back down. Similar to what we saw, going back to the MACD, similar to the movement that we saw back here. Okay. We saw the MACD early curling, right? Early curling here on October 16th. And then that led to an inevitable cross and, just a period of accumulation here during this testing lower around the 47 sub 50 level for silver. Okay, that's enough time on the silver charts. Look, I'm bringing this up because people are excited about what's going higher. They're excited about what makes people money. And I can't blame them. right? I got in on it. I didn't use a whole lot of size of my portfolio to get on it. And I probably will buy some more precious metals before this run is all over, whether it be palladium, silver, or gold. I don't think that the run's over for 2026. I think that we're going to see a brief respite, a brief correction to the downside, especially for silver that's had a historic run. And then we'll see what happens from there. But I think that there's quite a bit of compelling evidence that the run is not over for silver or gold. However, I do think 2026 will be the year that metals top out, and we'll see some sideways action in the stock market, and there'll be a heavy rotation into crypto. That is my thinking for 2026. All right. We have some comments here. Jagger said, "Good morning. Love my silver. Bought at $30. Easy to buy at pawn shops." Freddie said, "Sold your silver. Good morning, T. I hope you had a good Christmas." "You sold your silver too soon," says Freddie. Bond 3 Man said, "Silver's top isn't in. China is tightening exports on rare earth metals January 1st. And then Bondman said, "Eastern markets are still buying physical silver at $83. Yeah. So look, I'm saying that I think that the top for silver is not in. I think that silver will continue to rally in 2026. There will be a reckoning at some point, and people will realize that they're buying rocks when they could be buying the future digital currency. And then it'll reprice to the downside. But I'm not bearish on silver and gold for the midterm. I think in the midterm, silver and gold still have a very compelling story as a debasement trade, as kind of some safe haven asset. And also, you do have China buying historic levels and other sovereign nations buying historic levels of gold. Not to mention the stablecoin providers like Tether are also packing in the gold as well, right? So, we can talk about metals for the rest of the episode, or we can talk a little bit about crypto. I would kind of like to do that. Going over to the S&P 500, though, before we make our way to Bitcoin and crypto, the S&P 500 is actually in an interesting spot here because it's curling over after putting in all-time highs. And so that's what the stock market's doing today. It's down 0.4%, kind of not making too much of a decision, although it's not, decidedly not pointing higher, making a climb to 7,000. It's coming down to test a little bit today on December 29th. Monday, it's a short week. I do spot a little gap here that would bring it back down to 68. That wouldn't be too crazy. That'd be a pretty routine movement to the downside. Also have another gap down here to 67 for the S&P 500. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to Bitcoin, and I'll tell you what I'm seeing. It's a whole lot of sideways action. We got a big explosion. I'm on the 4-hour here. Got a big explosion yesterday for Bitcoin. We got all the way up to wicked up to 90,300, and then immediately turned around and came back down where it hung out at the 87 level that we're all too familiar with at this point. So that's what I'm seeing for Bitcoin. It's just continuing to tell the story of sideways action. I've talked in previous episodes. I won't talk about it today, but why the options market for IBIT and for Bitcoin are kind of telling this story and making it seem like it makes all the sense of the world. Bitcoin should just continue to go sideways. There's clearly buyers below 86 that continue to buy up Bitcoin. And I wouldn't call it a buy wall because walls can fall, but it does look attractive at 87, right? And there's some big buyers out there that just keep accumulating around those levels. All right. We have a few more minutes here. I wasn't sure if I was going to get to this story or not. I am, by the way, since you guys are tuning in here, I have been accumulating one crypto, and it's going to surprise you. I haven't told many people about this, but I want to tell you guys. So stay tuned to the end of the episode here. All right, one more story. This is an interesting story here from Quentin. So Quentin, friend of the channel here, says this: reports claim a systemically important bank failed a margin call overnight and was liquidated in the silver futures market. Within hours, the Federal Reserve injected another $34 billion through its emergency repo facility on top of $17 billion just days earlier. the bank reportedly blew through every risk limit, breaching every covenant, and exhausted all credit lines. This is what stress in the financial system actually looks like. Okay, so that's an interesting one. This goes back to the morning sentiment. The SEC filings indicate a silver desk was liquidated, and hours later, 34 billion was injected by Federal Reserve. Okay, so that's a developing story. If you guys want to read more of the facts on that one, you can go over to this Twitter account, Quentin Francos, and you can read more about that. My perspective on it is it's too small of a number to really matter a whole lot. I mean, like if it's a big bank, these banks have all kinds of insurance, and you can see that the Federal Reserve stepped in with $34 billion. That's actually, something that we want to see from a risk asset standpoint. Now, if there's continued structural instability, this could be a problem. But more than likely, what happened here is similar to what happened with GameStop, where a very large traditional financial institution was on the wrong side of the silver trade, thinking they were going to be cute and outsmart crypto. Outsmart retail and folks that are bullish and long silver. And they just got on the wrong side of the trade. So I don't think that this is going to happen again and again and again and lead to some big fallout. I think this is more than likely probably a contained issue, and $34 billion is not crazy for the Federal Reserve to print. And so that's probably the way that cookie crumbles. I will let you all know if anything changes with that. Binance, so BNB coin is the crypto that I picked up over the weekend. I think that Binance has just shown so much strength fundamentally, and also from a chart standpoint. So I think that Binance, in my mind, is actually ascending to kind of be around the levels of a Solana. In 2026, I think Binance will do well, BNB coin, but I don't think that Binance is quite at the level of Ethereum yet, by market cap or by status, right? I think that especially people in the United States don't have a positive kind of perspective of Binance. And so I think it has limitations there, whereas Ethereum, seems to be the darling of the West and the United States. So if Binance makes a play to be able to provide financial services and crypto services on American shores, and they're able to do that where the SEC and the CFTC and the U.S. government financial regulators feel comfortable, that could be very, very accretive for the BNB coin. That could see quite a bit of upward pressure for BNB coin. That's why I bought it. Did I buy a ton of it? No, it's not anywhere near my Bitcoin allocation. It's not anywhere near my Ethereum or Solana allocation. But I don't want to be left behind by not having any Binance. I think the Binance will be significant on into the future, and the charts just look so good for it. All right, I'll leave it there, folks. Again, I'm not looking at silver and saying doom is coming for silver, that this is going to be the pullback where it goes back down to 40 or 30. No, but I do think that silver is due for a pullback. And because of the heights that it's climbed so quickly, I think that we'll see a big move for silver back to the downside, bigger than most folks are expecting. But I do think that'll be a buy the dip situation for silver. And because the forces haven't changed that got silver to where it is. But as we get into the end of the year dynamics, right, where people are selling losers to tax loss harvest and they're chasing the upward momentum plays, that part is going to be left behind as we go into the new year. Now, there were some comments that made a good point that China is tightening exports on rare earth metals, right? But China is not the only producer of silver, right? So that will have an impact. And I think that we've seen a lot of that impact, the market pricing in anticipation a move from China like that. But I don't know that alone is going to push silver to 100, 200, 500, something like this. No, I think there has to be much more. All right, leave it there. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Make sure if you're interested in trading any assets that you join the Tim Warren Trading Group. There is a link down in the description for that trading group where you guys can learn to trade, and then you can trade with very experienced folks who've been trading for a long time across assets. So hope you all have a great rest of your day, and adios.